The legacy and voices of our ancestors is a foundation we can stand on and be inspired by today. Please like, share, and subscribe. When modern Egyptians accuse African Americans of trying to steal their culture, unquote, I'm trying to figure out what culture they're talking about. Because King Tut was not an Arab. King Tut was not the same race, religion, ethnicity, or nor did he speak the same language that these modern day Egyptians do. So, what culture are we trying to steal from them? One that they never possessed, or one that they're trying to steal from King Tut to begin with? You know, it is really interesting how one thing can expose another where you're not expecting it. There's been this controversy about Cleopatra and whether or not she was a black African. Now, I've studied this for years and years, and I've known this for years. I've never really challenged people either way. But Cleopatra was not a black African. She was a descendant of a ruling class of people that conquered Egypt later on in history. If people confuse Cleopatra with the generations before her, like King Tut, and so every time somebody claims she's black, it really kind of weakens the argument about the Africanness of Egyptians because you're talking about something later in history. She was a Macedonian Greek primarily, ethnically, but she ruled in Egypt and she did take on a lot of characteristics of Egyptian culture, which was one of the reasons she was a popular pharaoh. But I'm not really here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about what was exposed in a lot of these conversations is how anti-black modern Egyptians are. And what I wasn't aware of is the venom they have towards African Americans. You think, why would they? Why would they have some kind of venom towards people way across the ocean in America? Well, it's because African Americans, unlike most ethnic groups, in our DNA, we have this battle against ideologies of white supremacy. And so when we say King Tut was black, this is really get fired up because even though Cleopatra is a famous pharaoh, King Tut is the rock star of pharaohs. His tomb was undisturbed, and they broke it open and found all that treasure in there and all of his artifacts. And so he gives us a window to the past that these other pharaohs don't even give us as much. And so I went to the King Tut exhibit about 15 years ago, and I was really struck by one thing I wasn't expecting, which was how black, and when I say black, I mean they were black like the people you'd see in Kenya now. King Tut was a black man. This image here is a real image taken live and in person. Do you see how dramatically different this looks? His artifacts and all the artwork displays that. But the images we see coming out of there, you would never even think that. That's why it was such a shock to me. And that's why it's a shock to me now to find out that these modern Egyptians are claiming that the ancient Egyptians weren't black people. They're trying to say they were Middle Easterners like them, whatever that means, because that's a region. That's not an ethnic group or some kind of genetic group like they're trying to claim it was. But what you don't know is there's no other conquerors I know of like this who are trying to claim that the people they conquered are actually them. They don't want to act like they came in there later in history. Let me tell you something about these Egyptians. The modern Egyptians are ancestors of Arabs. And they hide this because the images you see almost exclusively are either artist re-renderings of what's actually there. There's some kind of simulations of what's actually there. When you go to the real exhibit, you see a whole different story about what King Tut looks like. Look closely at this image of the man. What more do I even need to say when you look at it? This is what King Tut looked like. King Tut was a black African. But they're not related to the ancient Egyptians. What you don't know either, and what's not talked about is, unless you study it, people don't know. There's like over 1,000 years between King Tut and Cleopatra. She's not related to them even. And they want to claim that they have, even though they're the conquerors, they want to claim they are the people. It'd be like us claiming that we're all Native Americans here in the United States right now. We know that isn't true. We give Native Americans credit for being the founders of a lot of our civilization here in this country. And we know we didn't predate them, and we know we're not their direct descendants, most of us. And we don't claim that, but these modern Egyptians are somehow trying to claim that. And when African Americans talk about this mentality they have and expose it, they just really get upset. They start to lie, they start to deny things. And one of the main things you have to understand about these modern Egyptians is they want to claim these ties to men like King Tut because they want to be seen as legitimately being there and not be seen as the colonizers they are. So they want to claim that. But see, because they're anti-black and racist, they don't want it to be exposed that King Tut was black because then they'd have to claim some kind of blackness, and they don't want to do that. So they try to strike a balance. They try to claim that they are the descendants of the people that founded Egypt and claim some kind of lineage with King Tut. But at the same time, they want to try to deny his blackness. So I want you to look at some of the images I'm going to show you, and I've already shown a lot of them. And one of the final comments I want to make is that people don't realize this, but Egypt is part of a group of countries called the Arab League. The Arab League. And think about this. If they were really ancient Egyptians, would that be true? If that was their main ethnic tie and cultural tie, would that be? No. And think about this. Any country that gets colonized, one of the earmarks of that is what language the people speak. So you think about the United States was colonized by the English. So what language do we primarily speak here? English. Now think about this. If they were tied to ancient Egyptians, wouldn't they be speaking ancient Egyptian or some language derived from that? But they don't. What is the main language that they speak in Egypt? It's Arabic. Why? Because they're colonizing Arabs. They are not the descendants of the Egyptians. King Tut was black. Look at these pictures. The people depicted in the artwork in his tomb were black Africans. And don't let this lie be perpetrated anymore. Don't believe any of their contrived evidence and all this DNA stuff, which is not true. They're not the same genetically as the people who lived there like over 3,000 years ago. That's all bogus. King Tut was black, and the people in his era were too, and that's all there is to it. Don't let these lies be seen as truth.